This is the Nearly Enlightened podcast. If you're returning, welcome back. I am Gianna. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. I'm very thrilled to have this week's guest on. Please help me welcome Stefan Burns. He is a geophysicist turned YouTuber who analyzes the current energies and educates others on how they might best be navigated for maximum soul growth and spiritual development. He recently launched his Planetary Resonance e-course to help others better feel and understand the energetic qualities of the background cosmic morphic field. You can watch his YouTube videos. I'll link them in the show notes. And I will also link his e-course and his website, Wild Free Organic. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm happy to be here and yeah, excited. It's been a while. We've connected a long time ago and now we're connecting again.
I know. Excited to have you on. So for season 3, you're the first male divine masculine energy that's been on. So this is really exciting.
Wow.
You can ground us in your divine masculine energies.
Well, you may be in for a problem because as I've analyzed my astrological chart, I'm realizing that there's all these feminine energies baked in there.
Oh, that's fun.
It's almost like Venus wanted to incarnate as a guy, but keep all her Venusian qualities just right below the surface.
Well, that works too then. So I recently just watched your Neptune retrograde video and I really loved it. It was powerful. I actually watched it twice. So for those of you who don't know Stefan, please go watch that on his YouTube. I just loved the message that we're finally getting this shift in collective consciousness, but not only collective, but individual. And that resonated with me. And I know so many others. So yeah, I just didn't know if maybe you wanted to talk a little bit about that to get started, because that's kind of like the current energy that we're in.
Yeah, there's a lot of energies right now overlapping. And so Neptune stationing retrograde at 29 degrees and 56 arc minutes, which is only 4 arc minutes away from the end. An arc minute is a 60th of a degree. So literally right on the cusp as it relates to Western tropical astrology and their measure of the zodiac. It's stopping short and then going back is very significant, not only because anytime it stations retrograde in that whole period, it's stationary in the sky. If you actually look up at the telescope, you're going to not see it moving through the night sky like a planet normally does, or the sun normally does, or the moon, whatever. So that supposedly gives it more of an energetic imprint. It amplifies energies because they're not transiting, it's direct. Then it's deciding to go back, and then it's going to be moving out of Pisces for the last time, based on my calculations, in the age of Pisces. And Neptune's a co-ruler of Pisces with Jupiter. And the last Jupiter-Neptune conjunction occurred in Pisces because Neptune moves slowly. So we have all these Piscean energies, and now Neptune's doing this final review, going down the checklist, okay, here's everything that we've learned since around 200 AD, and let's review it all and bring it all together and really mix it all together now. I think the internet's really allowing for that, all these different spiritual philosophies and ideas and everything to get mixed together in a way that wasn't possible before. And also even just the ease of traveling around the world. Now people can look and see that, for example, Thailand's an interesting location. So they go there, whereas before they would have had to have the travel magazine and all this. And now you can just see a photo on Instagram that grabs you. You're just like, whoa, I want to go there. You just feel that resonance because it's not the photo, it's the energy that's just being quantumly tunneled through the funnel, the photo to you. And so we've opened up all these little portals. And so Neptune stationing there is very significant in regards to that. And it's this year event for July, but then it's also this event for Neptune's transit through Pisces, which is 14 years long, which is very significant. And then it's this event for the 164-year cycle for Neptune, its entire orbital revolution, because Pisces is the very end. And then it's also an event for the very end of the age of Pisces too, because Neptune won't be in Pisces again when we go for the age of Pisces. It's going to end, and we'll be in the age of Aquarius, and then all of a sudden Neptune, yeah, will reach Pisces again in 164 years, but we'll be in a different astrological age completely. One ruled by Saturn, not by Jupiter. Very different energies. So this is like the final kind of hurrah for Neptune. And again, it had that Jupiter conjunction in Pisces, which was this big expansion of all these themes. That was back in 2022, I believe, somewhere around there. So because yeah, Jupiter right now is in Gemini, so you just go back a little bit. 2022, like 2021, something like that. So it's just a powerful moment for the collective, but certain people are resonating with it more, especially people in this field. And yeah, I mean that's one thing that's happening right now. There's also all the Pluto stuff, and yeah, so it's like a very interesting like web of energies right now. And that's why I'm glad I started studying all the planetary resonances, because it's helped me to decipher the individual frequencies. There's something known as a Fourier transform in physics, where you have a single wave function, right? You have a single wave that has all these different peaks and everything on it. And then you can look at that wave and you can split it across time and basically separate out the different frequency components. So you see this like kind of weird wave, and then you split out, oh, there's a 1 hertz component, there's the 5 hertz component, and then there's this weird 37 hertz component. And you see the different frequencies get pulled out, and you see their respective powers. This one's more powerful, this one's less powerful, this one's kind of moderately powerful. And so it's almost like by studying this, I've been able to do like a kind of intuitive Fourier transform on the energies at play at any given time, which helps to just understand my own energies and how I'm feeling. Like, let's say you're talking about how it's helped you to better feel these energies yourself, because we're all receivers. We're all receiving these energies too. So not everything is us. We all make up the collective, but there can be some collective energies that really aren't about you too much as an individual. I mean, yeah, you're part of it, but not really. Some people resonate with it more, but then it'll come in and you'll be like, why am I feeling that way? It's like, oh, okay, that's a collective energy. I don't have to resonate with that if I don't want to. And that's empowering. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why this stuff is really valuable to learn. And I'm glad I kind of dug into it.
Yeah, especially if you have those you're kind of like one of those people who flexes their empathic muscle. So you kind of get
Yeah.
it from the collective, or if you work with the public, that is always like you always feel it a little bit more because you're like in it. You're in that frequency.
Yeah, some people connect to it really strongly. Other people are, the more conscious you are of these things in general, I find the more connected you are to them. But connected doesn't necessarily mean suffering. I,
Right.
I do think there is a little bit of this theme of like, oh, I'm connected, so I'm suffering. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you can be connected, but not suffering. You don't need to die, okay? Like, just because some planet is over some degree point or whatever, it's not the end of the world. Like, let's just look at this very kind of objectively at times. Let's use both parts of the brain. Let's use left and right. Let's see it for what it is, and then also feel it, and then kind of navigate that. But I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff right now. Victim consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Neptune at the very, it's all in there. So, we don't want to scapegoat ourselves. Let's be honest.
No, and one of my teachers always said pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Mm-hmm.
And that has
Yeah.
stuck with me. And it goes with that. Like you can choose to be in that victimhood, or you can choose to be empowered by it and use it as a driving force to move yourself forward.
Yeah. And it can be tough. I mean, there's certainly times where you are kind of at the recipient end. Like I would say 2020 with all the government overreach and stuff. Like, I mean, I navigated that pretty well. Actually, it was a pretty good time for me. But in general, there were a lot of things I
Same.
didn't like. In general, but I have a lot of internal will and like drive, and I'm very anti-authoritarian. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm not really someone to just like sign up for things and just go with the flow. Um, in in like a sheep kind of way, right? Um, I mean, I'll look at things objectively and say, is that good for me? Is that not good for me? So that was kind of a good time for me, but also at the same time, there was nothing I could really do about certain things.
Right.
Uh, there were certain places I couldn't go. Like when I flew into Europe in 2022, the only country that was open for me was Hungary. And then they all opened up because they dropped their requirements. But like I would not have been physically able to go to that country unless I like snuck across the border or something. I mean, I don't know. It's just you can't get around that.
Yeah. So it's funny. The theme of this season 3 of the Nearly Enlightened podcast seems to be like working through these shadow aspects of the last couple of years and, and just kind of digging in and you, like I said, using it to empower us forward. And what you're bringing up is just like hitting the nail on the head. I too, like 2020 kind of had the best year of my life. Like I was living in Arizona, so it was a whole different world out there. Like there weren't
Mm-hmm.
very many restrictions and everything was pretty much open at everyone's own discretion. So you really got to dig into your sovereignty and decide like what is best for me. And I think this is why I love the practice of meditation and just all of spirituality is because you really peel back those layers to uncover the truth, truth with the capital T. So I feel like you're not as easily swayed by those outside forces like we experienced over the last 4 years. I don't know if that rings true for you or not.
Yeah, no, exactly. And some people have that built into them a little stronger than others, and but everything's a skill and everything's a muscle that can be trained. So like just yeah, meditation gives you the ability to pause. That's one of the main things. It's like, can you just pause and can you see things clearly? Like, are your eyes actually open? Like, are you really seeing a situation? I mean, as you get older, you can look back at situations prior and see things more clearly. You also see that, for example, I can look back in my life and see that people are very patient with me at times, right?
I feel like
Um,
anyone can say that though. You know,
yeah,
we're not here as perfect beings, otherwise we wouldn't be here.
yeah. But then some people just innately have like a stronger ability to kind of defy some of these things. Like, for example, our generation, we all have Uranus in Capricorn. Capricorn is Saturn. Capricorn is like order and systems and kind of government and kind of authoritarian in many ways, ruled by Mars. Uranus there is like, yeah, screw that. Like, I'm going to do what I want. I don't care. And some people have Neptune and Uranus conjunct in that sign. That's a 170-year cycle. So that's very rare. That's 1993. If you're a 93 baby, you got the two of them conjunct exact.
Oh, that's funny.
Um,
That's my brother.
yeah. So like those people are very much uh, depending on what house it falls in, that then modifies it. But
Right.
like in general, there's a little bit of an anti-establishment energy signature there that's going to ripple out through their entire life as people interact with them. And so mine's not exact. I'm before 93, but my Uranus and Neptune are both in the same signs. Neptune is that kind of spiritual, philosophy and the energy of you know, your psyche and that meditative energy and consciousness can also be a little bit delusion at times, but in the higher sense, it can be, really seeing things from a greater collective perspective. And so then Uranus can help you see and break those trends. Um, so there's been energy happening all across the zodiac, Capricorn, Pisces, I mean, everywhere. But yeah, I've been going back to those like 2020, 2021 energies as well recently. And seeing how that's really kind of just a preview for like the next like 4,000 years based on some of the astrological ages. So that's the video that I'm working on right now.
I-
Um,
I'll wait for that one. Can't wait.
yeah, it should just be a day or two now. But um, well, I mean, it's not the happiest video, but again, truth with a capital T, right? So like I feel like being honest with things. I mean, we don't know the future, but just based on transits and stuff, it's a pretty good archetypal view of what is probably or to some sense is going to come our way.
Well, I mean, I feel
Um,
like we're seeing the breakdown of a lot of systems and procedures and things that don't really work anymore. And that, those times of transition and change can always be kind of tumultuous before you kind of reach the other side.
mhm.
And I feel like we're not, with what's going on astrologically and just like what's going on the planet. I feel like we're not only at the end of a chapter, we're like at the end of a book. We're about to start something completely new. And I feel like that's like what you're doing. And I think that's why I wanted to have you on, because you're really bridging the gap between science and spirit. And I love that, because I'm more on the esoteric side of like a little bit more willy-nilly, and you really bring like this hard fact and data to your videos that I love. It's kind of like out of my comfort zone, but it's like it's so grounded in reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's also Capricorn, right? So our generation has a lot of Capricorn planets. Some people, if you're a little earlier, like 89, then you have Saturn in Capricorn, which is home sign. But yeah, it's interesting because I get the people that are more on the esoteric spirit side, and they like now learning about some of the actual stuff that's backing up what they're feeling or experiencing. And yeah, that groundedness. Then I also typically the science people don't watch my videos to learn about the spirituality, but I do find I have seen with quite a few of my subscribers that they start to appreciate it more and more because there is just some innate resonance there. And so everyone has this innate intuition to them and that feeling. And so you have to awaken that, though. Some people need that awakened. And so that's, everyone goes at some point through an awakening process, we hope. And so mine was further back, but I just have enough of that in there too for sometimes that to trigger some sort of feeling or awakening in the more science-minded folks. I've also had people be like, "This channel's crazy. I'm leaving now." It's like, okay, goodbye. But
Then it's not for you.
yeah. I mean, maybe you'll get there eventually. You don't need to. But I do try to like with these more kind of fluid energies, the spiritual stuff. I do try to keep it more grounded. I do feel like there's a lot of shenanigans in that field. A lot of people, there's a lot of liars in this field.
That's why using discernment is so important. This is
Yeah.
like you're speaking to my heart right now, because like that's why Nearly Enlightened was born. It's why like the people that have been on the podcast, all my guests, they're completely vetted by me. Like they're people who I know are not just talking the talk, but they've walked the walk before they decided to bring this to the public. And I
Yeah.
know you're no exception to that rule.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that gets me is
We can talk about it. We
people who
talk about
just,
controversial things on this podcast. I don't know if you've
yeah.
listened to past episodes.
I listened to some of them a while back, but not the recent seasons. So I'll have to go through and give some a listen. But yeah, just
We love a
people that
hot take.
just have no consciousness as relates to what they're saying, or it spirals, I guess. I guess once you feel like you can say a small lie because it'll make a situation better, then you don't feel as much conscious for saying something bigger every now and then. And it's like you're eating the cheese puffs. You're like, once they're gone, you throw the bag away. Did it ever happen? Right? You had the whole bag, but 2 days later, you tie the trash up early to take it out to the dumpster, so it's really out of your mind. It never happened. The receipts in there as well. The only thing your body knows, right? The body keeps score. Your mind does remember your subconscious, but I feel like that's what people do with lies. And then people that also lie will have no problem saying that they don't lie. So that's the big thing, right? So it's really this whole thing, like you have to really, that's why you have to develop intuition. And so you get a lot of people in the spiritual field who just say a bunch of nonsense. And what it is polluting. So then you get other people who are pretty good or have the right mindset or morals, right? They have a good moral compass, but then they get some of that pollution on them and they start repeating stuff just because it's been said a lot. One of these things is that there's like this photon belt in the universe, like that our solar system's traveling through this photon belt. But if you learn about what a photon is, it doesn't even make sense. Like the moment you just learn that a photon is this light particle, right? It's like the essence of light. I mean, based on my research, there isn't a photon belt. Light is always coming in. like there's a stationary structure of light that defies all the laws of physics and we're traveling through it. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But you get people that are pretty well respected in their field saying there's a photon belt, but not backing up with any evidence just because it's been repeated for years and years and years for some reason. And so it's the metaphor behind the photon belt that's exciting for people, that we're passing through this area of higher energy, causing us to awaken, right? Maybe some of that is true, but 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 then they claim some sort of like scientific superiority. So then you get on all these things too. It's like,
And
here's your,
it's kind of what we experienced going back to 2020.
yeah. So I mean, my thing is just always just do your own research, but do it well, right? Like learn how to just, you got to kind of go back to the basics. And some people have this more innately within them, that discernment ability. Truth resonates though. You just have to develop it and like dig a little bit more. If someone says something, don't just take it at face value, like look into it. Like my videos, I'll talk about the science a lot. All my research links are always there, right? I put all the DOIs, you can click them. Someone's like, here was this paper we're going to talk about, but then they don't add the link to it. Maybe they don't want you to read it, right? Are they just lazy? Well,
Maybe it never happened.
maybe, but you know, they show just the first page, but there's like 20 pages and you read it and you're like, oh, actually what you said is totally off from what the paper actually talked about. You're just using this as some cover. Or yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of this stuff out there and you can't get frustrated over it.
No.
But that's the Neptune and Pisces at the last degree in the last 4 arc minutes, is that you just have this full ocean of stuff right now. And then it's going to be moving into Aries. Saturn is going to be moving to Aries, both at the same time. Saturn is going to be like, yo, Neptune, we need to like get this organized and get all the crap out of here. And then Aries is just going to burn it all away. Like take all that junk and throw it in the fire. And so there's going to be a reckoning, I think, for a lot of these people and a lot of these ideas. I think a lot of them are just going to get thrown up in flame starting around like 2025, 2026. And maybe I'm a little bit of a herald for that because I'm tired of this stuff. But it's also great because there's so much there that your curiosity is endlessly satisfied. And I think there's a lot of value in interesting ideas. Like this idea of a photon belt is really cool, that there's this like energy structure that can alter consciousness as our solar system passes through it. That's pretty cool. But is it true?
I guess that's up to science to determine.
Yeah. And you know what the big thing is too? You know, this card's coming in. The card of conflict. I'm but in a good way, I hope. It's the, what was I going to say? It's like the spirit, like the superiority aspect to it as well. That like we know this and therefore we're totally superior in our understanding of all this stuff.
Right. Like you can't talk to me about it. Like this is what I know and you can't change my mind.
Yeah. And I just think we just need to be open and just to like, I think humans are very self-centered and egotistic. Like here we are on Earth, this little point, and we think we know everything about the universe. It's like we're not even on Mars yet. We don't even have like a second telescope over here to like, we don't even have a view from outside the solar system really. We're trying to understand the galaxy and the universe from a single point. Like it's not even possible. Like we can't even, like it'd be nice to be able to look at Jupiter from this direction and also this direction at the same time, right? It's like the person looking at the tree from a single angle. We don't have all these other perspectives top down. We're not seeing the roots, like what's underground, all this stuff. And so we just go off of these limited perspectives and then make these grand proclamations as to everything that's happening. And we need to get past that as a species.
Yeah.
As a collective, we need to get over that. And that
Yep.
I hope changes soon because we really don't know most of this stuff. So like, yeah, my videos maybe what I produce may feel more grounded, but it's really just like the best that we know, let's just be aware of that.
From
Um,
one person's perspective. I
yeah.
think that's important to note, and that shows like your humility, because my friends and I have a joke, we're basically just like plankton in the ocean. Like we're just so
Yeah.
insignificant, like not insignificant because we're part of the ecosystem, but like we're speck. We're a speck, and that we're only seeing this world through the lens of our own perspective, and that's different from person to person. I kind of welcome conflict because I think that's where change happens. Like if we're able to have these difficult discussions, and if you can bring two people together who might have vastly different views, but they can kind of talk it out in a way where they respect each other. They don't have to agree, but if you respect each other, I think that's where progress comes from. I think if you're not willing to have those kind of difficult conversations or kind of see things through someone else's lens, then like we're all doomed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm welcoming these conversations. I'm welcoming the uncomfortable conversations. I was during 20, the last 4 years, I was very outspoken about some things that weren't so popular. And um I had more than 1,000 people unfollow me because of my views, and that's fine. Like we said earlier in the podcast, like these people they're not meant to be here then. And, hopefully it planted a seed for them, and somewhere down the line it sprouts into something that looks like an awakening.
Mm.
But if not, like I need to stand true in who I am and keep discovering what the truth is with a capital T, like honoring that objectivity and seeing things beyond my limited view. And I'm a Gemini sun sign, and I think Geminis get a really bad rap sometimes for
Oh
kind of
yeah.
being for being flip-floppers or whatever, but we have this thirst for knowledge. And if we, I could tell you like one thing and be adamant about it, but if you're like, oh hey, but if you look at it this way, and here's the data on that, here's what I experienced, like, yeah, would I change my mind? Like, I'm very comfortable with changing my mind about things.
Yeah. Being comfortable changing your mind when presented with like better evidence, and also being comfortable like raising your hand and asking a question. Like I do that all the time. I have no problem when someone says something. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Or I went to this retreat in Costa Rica. I was invited to this retreat. It was really quite amazing. And I mean, at the time, it's not like I am nobody, I guess. I have, right now at this moment, 80,000 subscribers on YouTube. I guess it's pretty good.
That's
But
pretty decent.
it used to be like 500 though, right? It doesn't feel any different other than I have more comments to reply to now, right? And it helps to pay the bills now. But like my ethos and mission is basically the same direction. It hasn't really changed. But there was a lot of like these really well-known musicians and some scientists that they're like working with celebrities and everything. And it was these people were more spiritually minded, that's for sure. But there was also definitely a lot of ego there for sure. And so, and I didn't know any of these people. I was invited out randomly because they watched one of my videos. One of the people that was running the event watched my video, really liked it. It's like, we want you to talk about the Schumann resonances. So I show up, and there was a few times where I'm talking to someone and they're like, "Do you know who I am?" And I'm like, "No." "No, I don't." They're like, "What? You don't know who I am? Like you haven't listened to any of my music?" I'm like, "I was invited here randomly, and no, I have no idea who you are. I'm just looking at you right now as a person." Like I've never listened to, your Spotify and seen that you have, 400,000 monthly listeners. Like whatever. Or there was this other girl, um, and she was telling me about her like out of body experiences and like her astral travel and everything. And so I was like, okay, I wanted to do a dream experiment with her. I wanted to, because I have very good dream recalls. Like, you should visit me during your astral travel, and then I'll wake up. I'll definitely remember it if it occurs. I can wake up, and then we can like correlate to see if that actually occurred. Like, we can do a little science experiment here. And but there was like this weird energy where I was like, yeah, so just follow me on Instagram. You can message you there. And she didn't like want to share it. And she's like, I'm really popular on Instagram. I'm like, okay,
Cool.
like what, like whatever. She's like, no, you don't get it. I'm like, really popular. I'm like, I don't know your Instagram. I barely remember your name right now. We just met. This just sounds like a cool experiment to do. Um, but there was like this weird, with ego comes insecurity. That's why the ego exists, is to like kind of hopefully deal with any insecurity, to like solve that problem, you could say. And so it was interesting, but there's I feel we need to do a lot more work at this, like building healthy ego. There is healthy ego. It's not a
I
problem to have a
totally
healthy
agree.
ego.
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't have a healthy ego, we would lose the will to live. So I've said this on podcasts before too. Like, I do believe that there is a healthy ego. There's no such thing as an ego death, because then, we just evaporate into the ethers, into light, and beyond to the next realm.
Yeah, yeah. And so like one of the things that I thought of recently is like before reaching the ocean, right? There's the poem of the river finding itself, and then it reaches the ocean. It's afraid to become the ocean. It's not going to be the river anymore. I'm like, well, before we get to any of that, I want to figure out my little drop. Like, can I just figure out my little drop here before I reach the river, then before I reach the ocean? Because how can I remember how can I even remember my drop once I'm in the ocean if I don't know my drop now? Drop is so much smaller. And so I guess there's a little bit of that too with the ego, is like trying to figure out your drop, or like I'm the drop with a million followers. Like that's how you define your drop. But that's just all surface stuff. That's not
Right.
that's not actually your drop. Your drop is inside. Um,
Right. I had an issue with this when I first became a yoga teacher, because becoming a yoga teacher became part of being my drop. And then I
hmm,
realized, like, oh no, like that's not it at all. That's like not even what I am. Like, it's so much deeper than that. So we
yeah.
put all these little labels on our drops, but like
Hmm.
it's not it. It's not where the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I hope that that's also one of the things I try to convey with what I do, and to help like with these understanding these energies, is to help people see what's not part of their drop, specifically what is part of the ocean instead, which we're all connected to, but then also to help people to better understand their drop, just by because really, like there's certain spiritual philosophies and practices and mantras and all this stuff that we know, and a lot that we don't know. um, but I find that I don't need to teach people this stuff in terms of like specific phrases or Bible verses or anything. It's really more just like you discover those feelings and those energies and that self empowerment by just doing very basic stuff like grounding. Like if you just go outside in nature, God will give you that experience, right? Like I just need to be the person to help push people to do that more because it's cool or something, right? Like we emulate who we find is cool or that we look up to. And so if I do those things and I help inspire other people to do them, then that will give them that better inner connection, because that's what I've experienced, is that when I do certain practices like yoga or like grounding or just meditation, then I encounter those spaces all into themselves. And it's not through reading a book on Zen. Though that
Right.
book on Zen is cool, but that's not the experience, it's the knowledge. And
Yeah.
so you just have to drive people to those experiences, because I can't give it to you, only you can. But you can help guide them there.
Yes, and I think that's what sets apart, and this is why using discernment is so important when you're looking to work with a practitioner. And if somebody is telling you that they are the guru and they have the answers, like, run the other way. Like, no, they should be teaching you how to embody these practices.
Yeah.
So I have a
And
question.
yeah.
How did this come about for you? Like, how did the science mind come first and then you kind of found spirituality, or were you always kind of like in tune with spirit and just had a knack for science? Or how did the two kind of worlds converge for you? Because I feel like in this society we do separate them vastly.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, like oscillation. because when I was a kid, I've always had very active dream space. and effectively that's just how much can you maintain consciousness during lower frequency brainwave states, theta and delta. And so if you can maintain your waking consciousness, then you can experience those different aspects of reality.
So you're talking about like lucid dreaming?
Yeah, things of that nature. So I had a lot of interesting experiences as a kid, um, as it relates to lucid dreaming, but also these these weird experiences where, and this happens very rarely. If I will it, I can make it happen to a pretty high percentage, like probability. But
Do you know what your
where,
human design is?
yeah, manifesting generator.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say
Yeah,
that.
I can send you my chart later. But the like your body, you can feel your body go to sleep, but your mind is still normal active. And there's like this shaking period where your body, if you feel this like vibratory shake, then all of a sudden all your body rhythms are in sleep, but your mind is still going. So I had experiences like that. And like I had sleep paralysis once, and just this variety of interesting. There was one time as a kid where I was in my room and it was like quiet. I don't know what I was doing. I was just chilling or something, like reading a magazine or something. And all of a sudden I heard like the radio station. And I was able to listen to this song just like it was a speaker playing, but it was just completely in my brain. And it's not that I remember that song perfectly because it had every single like instrument and like thing embedded within it. It was full high resolution, full fidelity, everything. And I mean, I don't know how to explain that experience, but maybe it was like my brain actually recognizing that radio wave and then being able to translate that into just directly into the experience of that music. It was like I was listening to music, but without having to actually convey it through my ears, turning the sound waves into, electromagnetic impulses, which travel down the auditory nerve, which then I then process via the brain. Like I didn't have to do any of that. And so I had experiences like that, which were weird. Uh, and so, I mean, I always knew that something out there was greater. There was something more. Um, but then but then that kind of subsided. I think a lot of that subsided because I drank a lot of tap water. I mean, I didn't know the difference. So I think the pineal gland slowly got calcified. And then what
And I'm sure
happened,
like societal pressures too. Like there are things that stifle that as a child.
yeah, just in the background and
Yeah.
everything. And
Especially during like that adolescence teen years. I feel like it gets really with the flame gets squashed down.
yeah, I mean, I never talked about it to anyone, but yeah, I mean, you start to just your focus goes elsewhere. And then And then during actually when I had COVID in 2020, like February, like straight from the lab. I mean, that's what I think it came from. It was like straight from the lab. It was brutal, most sick I've ever been. Halfway through, all of a sudden, I woke up to drink my water, just like go to the bathroom sink and fill it up, and I had to spit it out. It tastes so bad. And so I was like, this is crazy. Like this water tastes awful. And so luckily right down the street was this like a water filtration store. And I started drinking reverse osmosis. And now I just drink spring water. And I think that has helped me to decalcify the pineal gland and just in general reset my endocrine system back to more normal functioning.
It's pretty
Just
impressive that you were able to taste it.
yeah. And now if I drink tap water, it's like, oh, like I can, and just in general, I have a like very good taste buds with water. Even if it's filtered, I can taste now how it's just
Same.
very flat and unstructured. So filter water doesn't do it anymore either. I mean, if I have like a little bottle here or there because I'm thirsty, it's not the end of the world. But generally, I'm pretty good with getting my good spring water. Um, but yeah, it's all important stuff. So you need to like do that as well, right? How many people are? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it too much, but
I mean, that's what we're here for. But it's like also with like one of your courses is like a gut microbiome course. And I think that, if on the surface level, if you're somebody that's just awakening to this kind of stuff, like, yeah, start drinking the filtered water or the spring water and start looking at what you're putting into your body. Because if your gut isn't right, how are you supposed to listen to that intuition? Like your
Yeah.
your intuition won't work properly if your gut's not functioning properly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You really just start with the base. Yesterday I went to the beach and eventually I'm going to sign up for a gym membership here. I just moved to San Diego and I've been traveling a lot. So I've had to learn how to stay active and fit without usually like a gym or things of that nature. I go to yoga classes when I can, but I haven't been going 3 times a week for 3 years. Um, but I just walked down the beach and I walked in the dry sand. So every single step was uneven and my feet were getting a crazy good workout, right? The toes are spreading out, right? I could feel my calves. I could feel my knees like in a good, like active way, my quads. And it was really just me going for like a walk down the beach. But this is like ultra basic foundational stuff, which is tremendously impactful if you do it consistently. So like something like that, something like drinking spring water, something like making sure you just go outside and like grounding every day requires very little like conscious effort in
Right.
regards to I need to do all these calculate. I need to have a workout program and stick to the schedule and all this, like maintain third eye gaze and whatever. Like it's
It
just
doesn't have to be that complicated.
you're just out there plodding along, just doing the basic stuff. But that's like 80% of it. And so if people do that, that really is impactful. And so, I mean, this isn't always the case, but when I see people that clearly aren't doing that, that's a big red flag. So the job that I was going to take before I launched into the YouTube thing, I took like a leap of faith, travel the world, all this stuff. The job I was going to take was going to be this big pay bump. I was going to be an office manager for my own geophysics company. Like I was going to do all the surveys and run the office there and expand that branch of the geophysics company in California. Um, and I don't mean to disparage this guy. I mean, he was nice enough when I met with him, but the owner of the company was like grossly obese. And it didn't seem like a good energetic interaction. Like he was a nice guy, but like clearly something is not functional here. Something's not working. And so I often now go based on my interactions with people. It doesn't matter what the offer is or whatever. If I feel some sort of something's wrong or some dysresonance, I'm just not into it. If there's something there, and it can be just a very physical thing too, right? I mean, everyone has different problems and conditions, unfortunately, but I do feel like a lot of, I mean, maybe I'm Taurine, just focus on some of these physical things, but if that's out of balance, like you said, if your gut's out of balance, how is your intuition going to be there? Your gut microbiome, brain
Yeah.
consciousness axis. It's like we can look at these simple things and and it's not a judgment, it's you making a decision for your own benefit and therefore for the benefit of everyone else, right? If you're doing it with the higher consciousness in mind, you don't have to take a bad deal just because maybe that person wants you to. Like, no, you can say no. And so I didn't say no just because the guy was fat, but that's I didn't do it just because of that, but I did because there was a whole bunch of factors, and then that was just like a little bit like, oh, and the guy who took the job, the guy who had the job before me, he died of cancer, and
So there is definitely something energetic going on there.
yeah, and so here's the conclusion is I then started to research into this stuff to a bigger degree. I mean, I was already in geophysics, but I did then effectively a lot of research into electromagnetism, into quantum physics, into biophysics, into all this stuff. Now I'm doing it more into like the planetary aspects and solar system. I've kind of moved outwards. But then I learned about all the health effects of electromagnetic fields and even the non-thermal effects from like microwave radiation and from power grids and all this stuff. And there's a ton out there. And so this job, one of the main responsibilities would have been to go to different power stations and substations and to locate the utility lines so then they could dig a trench or whatever. And so I would have been taking myself directly into like the nexus of the EMF radiation, where it's like 10,000 or 50,000 times stronger than background when you're just walking around outside.
It's
Because
like putting yourself in a microwave.
that's where it's being generated. Yeah. So I personally don't think it's a coincidence that the guy who did that for 25 years died of cancer at 65, because he just had too much radiated. These non-thermal EMF fields like microwaves and radio waves, all this stuff, it's really just an exposure equation. How much exposure are you getting? Because they can still cause DNA strand breaks, either single or double. And the more strand breaks you have, that's what creates cancer. Eventually, it just starts to mutate. So I was guided away from that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Because of little things, seeing the energetic equations at play, right? And you can see that in people's bodies. You can see that in people's faces, right? It's there's just different ways of thinking about it. You can think about it in terms of energy, like someone has an inflamed face, their face is all puffy, let's say, and there's acne or whatever, right? And maybe you're young, and so that happens when you're young. But you can see it as like the energy, or you can just see it as like their hormone system. But really, it's both at the same time. But you can get a big glimpse into people and their life and what they're going through and their aura and everything, you could say, just by looking at their actual physical body. And we shouldn't be gaslighting ourselves that that's not the case, because we do that collectively.
Yes, I know. In the name of acceptance and inclusion.
Yeah. And so it's just the truth
Yeah.
with the capital T. And so I know, like, personally, where I need to work on things, there's a reason I wrote a gut health book, is because that's like ancestral karma in the family. And so I just have to be very precise on like what I eat. But also at the same time, I think spirit gave me that, because if I eat super clean with certain foods, just like if I just eat things that only agree with me, I just I focus on what agrees with me, and just I don't eat things that my body doesn't want. I do think that amplifies the spiritual, like, evolutionary process, because that's your energy coming in, and so that needs to be in resonance as well.
I agree. That's why part of the Yoga Sutras is about eating, and even the yamas and the niyamas are like health practices, hygiene practices. And that's also been hugely important for me. Growing up when I was young, I probably had some like past life stuff that I came here with to work through. I had a lot of like throat chakra stuff, and lived like the first 7 years of my life basically on antibiotics because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So a big chunk of my 20s was, yes, finding yoga and these physical practices, these spiritual practices, but also finding these health practices really elevated what I was doing too and pushed me forward. I was vegetarian for 7 years, and that was something that my body needed at the time. And then my health kind of changed, and I added in grass-fed beef into my diet here and there, and it has been life-changing. So just like listening to those things that your body needs, and when you tap in and when you kind of, like I said before, remove all those layers, you start to uncover what the truth is, and you really what your body needs, what it's calling for. Like, I can tell if I'm getting a cold, like I know right away, like I know when my immune system is down, and then I can take those precautions. So like, I'm not getting sick for like a whole week, 2 weeks. I'm getting sick for maybe like 2 days. I need like a little extra rest, a little extra something. And then I'm back to my normal self. And I think when you tap into those practices, and like they're all one, we've compartmentalized all of this stuff. It's like we compartmentalize science and spirit when really they're one. Like God gave us science for a reason. And it's the same thing with health practices. Like we've compartmentalized it, but there's a reason in the Yoga Sutras 5,000 years ago, they knew that body, mind, and spirit wellness were all one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to go back to your question of like, how do I get into it? I really think that in general, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And so as you start to do it, it just starts to kind of grow and grow and become easier and easier. And that's why focusing on those foundational inputs is such a good recommendation, in my opinion, because it takes a
Agreed.
lot of the guesswork out of it. You're not overthinking. Like you're a Gemini, I'm a Virgo. We could both overthink for sure. Our blessing and our curse, but you just keep it simple, stupid, and you just keep plodding along, uh,
Well, I think
and
that's why
then it all works
meditation
out.
has been hugely helpful for me because it helps you to weed through that overthinking and you learn to control your mind. Otherwise, your mind controls you.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. It's already been yeah, wow, it's already been quite a bit of time.
I know. Time just flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, when we're roasting everybody.
That's not that this is what this podcast has become, but we definitely dive into the shadow aspects. Like, I am not a fan of the positive vibes only crew. Like, we
Mm,
didn't come to this planet to only talk about that. And I think that's why I love your take on astrology and the cosmos is because it is grounded in reality. It's and you also have a great way of being like, oh, well, here's the opportunity for growth. Like it's all an opportunity for growth. And, I'm not for the doom and gloom astrology either. Like there was
mm.
somebody who I just came across on Instagram and like my discover page or whatever. And he was like, don't be out in this full moon. It's
Oh.
dangerous. I'm like, oh, take these people off the internet. Like you, sir, are a menace to society and like stop making people fearful. Like it just like made me shake my head and like,
There's
yeah,
a
I just
big difference between saying this moon has these qualities to it, these archetypal energies, and another one saying like you can't leave the house today. Like you
yeah.
need to do this. You're going to feel like this. Like I don't like some of that language where it's like because it's energy, you're going to feel like this. You're going to feel emotionally vulnerable and in pain, and you may feel like you need to eat 3 sleeves of Oreos. It's like, no, that's you saying that and putting that on everyone else too. Just know what are the energetic properties. Like I just recently had a Pluto moved over Pluto's on my MC, and then Mercury then went in opposition in Leo, which is right on my IC. And the quick story is that Pluto on my MC, that's like your job and everything. A lot of people would interpret that as like this very negative thing. In fact, Mercury's communication over on my IC, which is home. I needed to find an apartment in San Diego. So I made a video just very much, it's the Neptune video,
Yeah,
where I
yeah,
just
I
talked
saw that.
about the struggles that I had and that if people want to support me, I have the course now, which is to support them and that it would make this all transition easier. Like it was perfect timing for the launch. And so I utilized that career and that home axis. And then I got some orders, which is great. It was a good launch. And now I have an apartment. And so it wasn't this doom and gloom thing. It was actually channeling, using the two of them together. And that opposition created an opportunity. Oppositions aren't bad. It's just you build a polarity. And there was this polarity in my life between I needed to keep pumping out YouTube videos to pay the bills, but also I don't have an apartment, which makes that difficult. So that was the opposition really. And I brought them together, synthesized them, and then had the result that is now I signed a lease yesterday. So, but a lot of astrologers would tell you that this is some awful thing, but I use that in a very harmonious way.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's
that's a tough thing.
even retrograde gets like such people hear the word retrograde and already like the fear flags are flying and it's like they're not necessarily a bad thing. Like it's a time of reflection. It's a time to like go over what has happened so that we can move ourselves forward in the best possible direction.
Yeah. And it's also like I just took a Kundalini class, and supposedly guru, gu means darkness and ru means light. That's what he said. So, but in general, light comes out of darkness. All the
Right.
creation myths have night and darkness and chaos first, and then light emerging from that. And so that that's really kind of the thing. Like I feel like light workers who aren't afraid to go into those dark spaces, uh, they're the ones that are really actually delivering the light from the darkness. And so that means embodying more of that yin aspect at times. And so I feel like I'm very much yang, but also very much yin, because I can be in those realms to some degree and then shine a lot of light out and just hopefully help people in that way.
Yeah, and well, we all are. Like Kundalini is that merging of masculine and feminine energy through the snakes up the spine, and and some people it just comes out more one than the other. But we all have both. It's working with the duality, and I've been very candid on this season. Like last year was a very tumultuous year for me. It was like not great. There was a lot of like grief and loss, and just those hard life things. And I really feel like I didn't see it at the time, but it put me in the right space, and it set me back on it's a different path than what I wanted to be on, but I'm seeing now that it's where I'm supposed to be. It's where I was meant to expand and propel forward. Like I wouldn't have had this expansion that I've had in the last couple of months if it wasn't for that like kind of contraction time.
The same thing happened to me in 23 in general, but yeah, big blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my card was the Five of Swords, and it says conflict, disagreements, competition, defeat, winning at all costs, sneakiness, bullies, theft, and abusive relationships. And so, I think it's just important that we see people and we see situations for what they are, and we're willing to, stand up for ourselves. And if anyone took anything from this conversation, it's just always take a pause, take a beat, even from this, and just to like meditate on it. And like you don't have to be triggered behaviorally to like jump into anything instantly. Like we can take our time with this. Like you can look into things more. We can just in general, like we can just go our own direction, and we don't need to listen to what everyone's telling you to do. At least I haven't in the past few years, and it's worked out great for me. And so if I can be a spokesperson for that to some degree, then that's great.
Yeah, well, when you tap into that inner knowing and that infinite inner wisdom, I feel like there's no wrong decisions. It's
Ev-
always putting you where you need to be.
Eventually, it all works out.
Eventually it all works out. Yep. That's the perfect place to end. Thank you for being here with me today. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for listening to the Nearly Enlightened podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, and I will see you next time.